and welcome to the weird and the wonderful with strange bones. That's me. And I'm hoping tonight we are going to have a good evening indeed, as we have a whole lot of things available. So let's see what we can do. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Jo-André van Dyke, good to have you on board. And tonight we are going to be doing what we do, which is to check out the weird and the wonderful. And we are at the moment looking into aliens, because aliens are cool. Are they really out there? Are they not? Have they visited? Have they interfered? All of these questions and more. But for tonight, I'm not sure exactly how things are going to go. It all depends. I am hoping for a guest this evening, which I think will be particularly good. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But failing which, we still have plenty to talk about and all kinds of things to do. So buckle up and let's see what we can find out to add to our list of what really, in honesty, is mostly questions about aliens and our country and culture today. For those of you who do not know, we shall orientate ourselves. But before we do, I'm going to remind you that on this channel we love to have comments, questions. We do not expect you to believe or disbelieve, or agree or disagree. Either, all, whatever is fantastic, it's wonderful, we love it. However, we do not abide rudeness. And that being the case, if you are rude, be warned, we shall give the boot, because that's how we roll. We do not permit rudeness. But that said, welcome to you all. I do hope that you are interested in aliens. If you are back again, I thank you for returning, and I very much do hope that you are keen to take this journey with me. Add any kind of questions you like. I will do my best to answer them as long as they are within the bounds of the topic. But having said that, like, share, subscribe, do all of those wonderfully good things that help keep the channel going so that we can do this lots and lots and lots. But to get started, where are we going to be in the world? Well, the answer to that is very straightforward. We are going to be in Texas. Now, Texas, of course, capital being Dallas, the Lone Star State bordering with New Mexico, which we were at in our last live, and I came across to Texas because it's got some interesting stuff, and we like interesting. It is also bordering with Mexico, the Mexican Gulf, with Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. It is, of course, a particularly good place to see UFOs, simply because it is one of those big, wide, flat, open desert type places where you get lovely clear skies, uh, all the better to see you with, my dear. So that, of course, we approve of greatly. I am hoping very much that we shall have the honor of the company tonight of our good friend Endless Thoughts, who said she would very much like to join. And we would very much like to have her join. So we shall see what we can find there. Texans, of course, that's the place of oil and the biggest of everything, they say. All kinds of different myths, legends, and more. So hopefully that will give us something to work with. But we are not so much here to worry too much about the politics and placement. We are rather more interested in the things that we might find. So Texas does have a history of UFO sightings. Some of the most notable incidents including the Aurora, Texas crash in 1897, the Levelland, Texas sighting in 1957. Houston has the highest number of reported UFO sightings in the state, followed by Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, and El Paso. So quite a lot of reports, at least. And of course, the famous ones include Aurora, Levelland, Lubbock, Marfa, and more. So hopefully we will get some good stuff there. Now, they do have large population areas, such as Houston, Dallas, and Austin, which therefore have quite a lot, they say, of reports of UFOs. They do say, however, just to balance what we are claiming, that there are a number of military bases, such as in Tarrant County, which might be the reason for more sightings, which might be experimental aircraft rather than actual UFOs. We shall see what we think for ourselves in that regard. As I say, the dark skies are perfect for stargazing, and of course, the more you see, the more you see. But they say that oil and gas flares, especially in West Texas, can sometimes be mistaken for UFOs. So perhaps there are reasons. In terms of what does the government say? Well, the US government, through programs like Project Blue Book, have investigated some UFO sightings, but have generally concluded that they are explicable. NASA has recently launched a study on UFOs, or as I have to keep reminding myself, in the modern age, we don't call them UFOs because that's credulous. No, we call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. What's the difference? I have no cooking clue. Sounds like a UFO to me. Now, NASA's interest seems to be potential safety and security implications, to which we obviously are going to ask ourselves, hold on, from what? Maybe we'll find out. But with that in mind, let's see what we can discover. And we are going to begin with one which is reportedly the most famous. I will admit that until I started doing my research, I had not heard of it. Maybe that's my fault, though. Now, Aurora, for those of us who don't know, um, is a place. They do have interesting names for things. I do like them. It's a place in Texas. We know that the incident occurred reportedly on April 17th, 1897, so it wasn't recent, when, according to locals, a UFO crashed on a farm. Promising, promising. The incident, similar to the more famous Roswell incident that happened 50 years later, is claimed to have resulted in a fatality of the pilot. The pilot, such as he was said to have been not of this world and therefore was some kind of alien. The pilot, which I suppose shows the attitude and mentality of the good folks of Texas, which I must admit is quite endearing, buried the poor fellow in the local graveyard. A stone was placed as a marker for the grave, but the stone, it seems, has since been removed in order to protect this happy fellow that is lurking therein. There is a marker detailing the fact outside the cemetery to say that, yes, he was there. Now, what actually happened? So, an article appeared in the Dallas Morning News written by S.E. Hayden describing the UFO crash. It's said to have hit a windmill. I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh. It really did hit the fan. It hit. Sorry. The UFO hit a windmill on the property of Judge J.S. Proctor 2 days earlier at around 6 a.m. local Central Time, resulting in its crash. The pilot, who was reported to be not of this world and speculated to be a native of Mars, according to a reported Army Signal Service officer named T.J. Weems from nearby Fort Worth, did not survive the crash and was buried with Christian rites, as is proper, at the nearby Aurora Cemetery. The cemetery now no longer contains the marker as to where exactly the grave is said to be, but there is a Texas Historical Commission marker mentioning the issue. Reportedly, wreckage from the crash site was dumped into a nearby well located under the damaged windmill, while some of it ended up with the alien in the grave. Adding to the mystery was the story of Mr. Brawley Oates, who purchased Judge Proctor's property around 1935. Oates cleaned out the debris from the well in order to use it as a water source. Fair enough, I suppose. But later developed an extremely severe case of arthritis, which he claimed to be the result of contaminated water from the wreckage dumped into the well. As a result, Oates sealed up the well with a concrete slab and placed an outbuilding on top of the slab. According to the writing on the slab, this was done in 1945. Now, the first theory is that the entire thing was a giant hoax, primarily based on a 1980 Time magazine interview with Etta Peags, an 86-year-old Aurora resident who claimed that Hayden had fabricated the entire story. She stated that Hayden wrote it as a joke and to bring interest to Aurora. The railroad bypassed us and the town was dying. Peags further claimed that Judge Proctor never operated a windmill on his property, a statement later refuted, and in fact as part of the UFO Hunters episode, which found the base of a wooden water pump tower constructed around the well. Paranormal researcher Jerry Drake, on April 12, 2020 episode of the Monster Talk live podcast, challenged that finding and noting the well was clearly a bucket well of modern construction, estimated to be built sometime after 1940, and not a well designed for the use with a windmill. Now, not to be funny, but given how long after the removal of the windmill this occurred, I don't think either of them could tell for certain, to be really honest. It could go either way, but that's just me. The incident has been investigated on numerous occasions, and it's been on TV. Now, in 1998, Dallas-based TV station KDFW aired a lengthy report on the incident, and reporter Richard Ray interviewed former Fort Worth Star-Telegram reporter Jim Mars and the other locals who said that something crashed in Aurora. However, Ray's report was unable to find conclusive evidence of extraterrestrial life or technology. Ray reported that the state of Texas erected a historical plaque in the town that outlines the tale and labels it as a legend. But was it a legend? We don't know. Now, on December 19, 2005, UFO Files aired an episode related to this incident titled The Texas Roswell, which featured a 1973 investigation led by Bill Case, an aviation writer for the Dallas Times-Herald, and the Texas State Director of Mutual UFO Network. And yes, we're back to me sniggering at the acronyms. It's MUFON again. MUFON, sorry. MUFON uncovered two new eyewitnesses to the crash. Mary Evans, who was 15 at the time, told of how her parents went to the crash site. They forbade her from going, and the discovery of the alien body. Charlie Stevens, who was aged 10, told how he saw the airship trailing smoke as it headed north towards Aurora. He wanted to see what happened, but his father made him finish his chores. Later, he told how his father went to town the next day and saw wreckage from the crash. So it seems that there were people who at least claimed to have seen things. MUFON then investigated the Aurora Cemetery and uncovered a grave marker that appeared to show a flying saucer of some sorts, as well as readings from its metal detector. MUFON asked for permission to exhume the site, but the Cemetery Association declined permission. After the MUFON investigation, the marker mysteriously disappeared from the cemetery, and a 3-inch pipe was placed into the ground. MUFON's metal detector no longer picked up metal readings from the grave, and thus it was presumed that the metal was removed from the grave. Fair enough. MUFON's report eventually stated that evidence was inconclusive, but did not rule out the possibility of a hoax. The episode featured an interview with Mayor Brammer, who discussed the town's tragic history. Now, other investigations by other people, Tim Oates, grandson of Brawley Oates and the now owner of the property with a sealed well where the UFO wreckage was purportedly buried, allowed the investigators to unseal the well to examine for the possible debris. Water was taken from the well, which tested normal except for large amounts of aluminium. The well had no significant contents. It was stated in the episode that any large pieces of metal had been removed from the well by a past owner of the property. Furthermore, the remains of the windmill base found near the well site, which allegedly refuted Miss Peake's statements, and basically proved that Judge Proctor did have a well with a windmill on his property, which is fair enough, and I suppose all very good. The landowner did, however, allow them free access, so fair. In addition to that, the Aurora Cemetery was again examined, and though the Cemetery Association still did not permit exhumation, using ground-penetrating radar and photos from prior visits, an unmarked grave was found near the other 1890s graves. However, the condition of the grave was very badly deteriorated, and the radar could not prove what type of remains existed. The landowner, however, gave them pieces of metal which contained mostly aluminium, but also an unknown metal. Fair enough. So it seems that there might have been something in there, but we are not entirely certain exactly what it might have been to be able to properly prove. I suppose digging up graves is not considered to be a good thing to do, no matter whose they were, which leads one to the age-old question of when does it stop being grave robbing and when does it start being archaeology? Fair question. In popular culture, however, the incident is dramatized in the 1986 film The Aurora Encounter. And of course, it was discussed on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, which was in the premiere of the third season entitled Aliens and the Old West, that focuses on late 19th century UFO sightings in Western North America. An independent short movie was made about it by musician and historian Thomas Negovan and Aaron Shapps, just called Aurora. Now, they unfortunately they started to muddy the waters a bit and mixed it up with the Nazi conspiracy theory of Die Glocke. Basically, Die Glocke is the Nazi bell, which may or may not have been made. It's part of the Nazi wonder weapons devices, the Wunderwaffe. Whether or not they got these and made them based on alien technology or whatever, who's to say? All we can say is that it probably did exist as an idea. Whether or not they actually made it, we don't know, but it became used in fiction for all kinds of reasons, which, yeah, I reckon I could understand that. But that is, alas, all we have on the Aurora incident at the moment. And that to me is very sad, because I would very much have liked to have a lot more going in that regard. Um, so, such as and as such. But that is not the only case from Texas. So let's see what other interesting things we can possibly encounter. So, in an interesting article I discovered entitled, "Do You Believe in Aliens?" Um, well, it seems that there are certain Texans, at least, that very much do believe in aliens and that they have seen them, that they have seen an unidentified flying object hurling through the sky that looked like nothing they'd ever seen before. While these mysterious UFOs have been spotted across the state over the last few decades, one place has seen these objects far more than others. According to a list compiled by Stacker, Houston has had the most UFO sightings in Texas history, which is pretty good going. Houston recorded a whopping 435 sightings since 1995. And this article, to be fair, came out on January 3rd of 2025, so reasonably recent. Other locations in Texas with high UFO sightings absolutely do exist, but this is what they said about America's alien obsession and compiling the data to discover the top 10 places in each state. Stacker compiled a ranking of cities with the most UFO sightings in Florida using data from the National UFO Reporting Center. Data encompasses all reports of UFO sightings going back to 1995. Sightings with locations listed across multiple cities were not included in this analysis. For now, the US government's official stance is that extraterrestrial life does not exist. But if the last century is any indicator, it will not do anything to curb America's alien obsession, which I think is probably true. Let us go on, therefore, to the next place, the Leveland UFO case. Now, this occurred in 1957, over 2 days, November 2nd and November 3rd. And it happened on the highways around the town of Leveland, Texas. Now, at the time of the event occurring, they reckon that there was around about 10,000 people that lived there, populated, the population's, my brain has short-circuited. See, aliens are going overhead. It's located west of Lubbock, Texas, on the prairie, which are the flat parts of Texas. So, okay, good place for seeing things. This case is considered by ufologists to be one of the most impressive in UFO history, mainly because of the large number of witnesses involved over a relatively short period of time. However, both the US Air Force and UFO skeptics have described the incident as being called either by ball lighting or a severe electrical storm. So the skeptics are getting their say in first. Fair enough. That said, on the evening of November 2nd, 1957, two immigrant farm workers, Pedro Salcedo and Joe Salaz, called the Cleveland Police Department to report a UFO sighting. Salcedo told police officer A.J. Fowles, who was working the night desk at the police station, that they had been driving about 6 kilometers west of Cleveland when they saw a blue flash of light near the road. They claimed their truck engine instantly died and a rocket-shaped object rose up and approached the truck. According to Salcedo, I jumped out of the truck and hit the dirt because I was afraid. I called out to Joe, but he didn't get out. The thing passed directly over my big truck with a great sound and a rush of wind. It sounded like thunder, and my truck rocked from the flash. I felt a lot of heat. As the object moved away from the truck engine, it started working normally again. Believing the story to be a joke, Fowler ignored it. 1 hour later, a motorist, Jim Wheeler, reported a brilliantly lit egg-shaped object about 200 feet long was sitting on the road about 6 kilometers east of Cleveland, blocking his path. He claimed his vehicle died, and when he got out of the car, the object took off and its lights went out. As it moved away, Wheeler's car restarted and it worked normally. Now, as a debriefing context, as it were, we do know that when it comes to alien spaceships, the rocket-shaped type and the egg-shaped type are both common ones. We do know that having engines cut out is also fairly common, and it was a topic discussed in our last live with some of our regulars, that it seems that assuming the alien stories are true, that they require to refuel after their interstellar travel, and they do it by absorbing energy, which might be why they are attracted to certain locations, and might be why they interfere with electrical lines, trucks, houses, and more, because they are draining off the energy in order to power up their ships. That is entirely a theory that came out from us chatting, and it's possible. I think it's reasonable. It is not inexplicable, so it's possible. Did that happen? I have no idea, but it works for me as a theory working at the moment. Now, at 10:55 p.m., a married couple driving northeast on Cleveland reported that they saw a flash of bright light moving across the sky. Their headlights and radio died for approximately 3 seconds. 5 minutes later, Jose Alvarez claimed he met a strange object sitting on the road about 18 kilometers north of Cleveland, and that his engine died until the object departed. At 12:05 a.m. on November 3rd, a Texas Technological College, now known as Texas Tech University, college student named Newell Wright was surprised when, while driving about 16 kilometers east of Cleveland, his car engine began to sputter. The ammeter on the dash jumped to a discharge and then back to normal. Now, I am sure, hey, you arrived, Endless Thoughts. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're just quickly looking into the Llewellyn UFO interactions. So, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to invite you because you are special. So, 5 minutes later, Jose Alvarez claimed he saw the object. Where are we got down to? I was distracted. So, what is an ammeter? An ammeter is an instrument used to measure the current of a circuit. Electrical currents are measured in amperes, hence the name. Direct measurement, the ammeter is connected in series with the circuit in which the current is to be measured. So, okay, he had a device used for testing whether or not there is electrical current, and according to him, his one that was just lying on the dash and not actually connected registered. The motor started cutting out as if the car was out of gas, and the car rolled to a stop. The headlights dimmed and then several seconds later went out. When he got out to check on the problem, he saw a 100-foot long egg-shaped object sitting in the road. It took off. His engine started running again. At 12:15 a.m., Officer Fowler received another call, this time from a farmer named Frank Williams, who claimed he had encountered a brightly glowing object sitting in the road. As his car approached it, the lights went out and the motor stopped. The object flew away and his car's light and the motor started working again. Other callers were Ronald Martin at 12:45, James Long at 1:15, and they both reported seeing a brightly lit object sitting in the road in front of them, and they also claimed their engines and headlights died until it flew away. Now, of course, this is a lot of different people. So, huge thoughts to Endless Thoughts for the roses and all the hearts. You are an absolute darling. Thank you so much. And don't forget, you are more than welcome to join the live whenever you are ready. Up to you. By this time, several Llewellyn police officers were investigating the reports, and among them was Sheriff Weir Clem, who himself saw a brilliant red object moving across the sky at 1:30 in the morning. At 1:45, the Llewellyn's fire chief, Ray Jones, also saw an object, and his vehicle's lights and engine started sputtering. The reports apparently ended soon after. So during the night of November 2nd to November 3rd, the Llewellyn Police Department received a total of 15 different reports. Wow. And Officer Fowler noted, surprise, surprise, everybody who called was very excited. So, all right, this was more than your standard, which means it was probably not enough. That's terrible, terrible. I hope everything is all right with you and that there's nothing bad keeping you away, only things that are very, very good. But I'm immensely pleased that you are able to stop in. It's always awesome to have you here, and I love your engagement and questions and more. Perhaps we shall be able to do this live together in the future. But until then, yes, you have an absolutely fabulous, fabulous night as well. Lots of peace to you. So now things have gotten out of hand, of course. So now they've brought in the US Air Force. So the sightings received national publicity, and the aforementioned Project Blue Book had to have a look in. Now, Project Blue Book, it started in 1947 by an alien. The alien is now sitting on my lap and purring, and she does not take no for an answer. And when she wants to sit, she will sit. And the last time I denied her the chance to sit on my lap, what she did was sit on my head. So nowadays we let her sit where she wants to sit. But nevertheless, Project Blue Book started in 1947 as Project Sign. It was later renamed Project Blue Book, and it is the official US Air Force research group assigned to investigate UFO reports. An Air Force sergeant was sent to Cleveland and spent 7 hours in the city investigating the incident. After interviewing 3 of the eyewitnesses, Salcedo, Wheeler, and Wright, and after learning that thunderstorms were present in the area earlier in the day, the Air Force investigator concluded that it was just a severe electrical storm, probably ball lighting or St. Elmo's fire, which is the major cause for sightings and reported auto failures. According to UFO historian Curtis Peebles, the Air Force found only 3 persons who witnessed the blue light. There was no uniform description of the object. Additionally, Project Blue Book believed that Salcedo's account could not be relied upon. He had only a grade school education and had no concept of direction and was conflicting in his answers. In view of these stormy weather conditions, an electrical phenomenon such as ball lighting or St. Elmo's fire seemed to be the most probable cause. Engine failures mentioned by the witnesses were blamed on wet circuits. Okay. It doesn't sound like they put much effort in for a group that's supposed to investigate these things, but there you go. Donald H. Menzel, an astronomer at Harvard University and a prominent UFO skeptic, agreed. Well, he's a prominent skeptic. Agreed with the Air Force explanation. Members of civilian saucer groups complained that since the Air Force investigator spent only 7 hours in the area, he obviously had not taken the problem seriously and could not have found the correct solution. Even 70 hours of labor, however, could not have produced a clearer picture. The evidence led to an overwhelming probability. The fiery unknown at Cleveland was ball lightning. Menzel argued that in Cleveland on the night of November 2nd, conditions were ideal for ball lightning. And for several days, the area had been experiencing freak weather, and on the night in question had been visited by rain, thunderstorms, and lightning. Menzel admitted that since ball lightning is short-lived and cannot be preserved as tangible evidence, its appearance on the night of November 2nd can never be proved. However, he also argued that only the saucer proponents could have converted so trivial a series of events, a few stalled automobile, balls of flame in the sky at the end of a summer stroll, into a national mystery. Of course, not everybody agrees with that. So, Two ufologists, James E. MacDonald and J. Allen Hynek, disputed this, of course. Both men argued that there was no electrical storm in the area when the sightings occurred. In testimony before a committee of the U.S. House of Representatives in 1968, MacDonald said that one famous UFO case was at Levelland, Texas. 10 vehicles were stopped within a short area, all independently in a 2-hour period. There is no lightning or thunderstorm, only a trace of rain. Hynek wrote that as the person responsible for the tracking of the new Soviet satellite Sputnik, I was on a virtual around-the-clock duty and was unable to give it any attention whatever. I am not proud today that I hastily concluded that the Air Force evaluation was correct on the basis of information that an electrical storm had been in progress in Levelland at the time. This was shown not to be the case. Observers reported overcast and mist, but no lightning. Hynek also noted that had I given it any thought whatsoever, I would have soon recognized the absence of any evidence that ball lightning can stop cars and put out headlights. Ufologists have also argued that the Air Force investigator did not interview 9 of the 15 witnesses, nor were they mentioned in Blue Book's final report on the incident. So what do we say? Well, number one, if it was one person, yes, maybe. 2 people, possibly. But if 15 people all along experience exactly the same thing, I'm going to argue it probably wasn't a random incident. And if there was that much ball lightning in the area, dear God, surely there must have been one hell of a storm, which there wasn't. So it seems that there was a great deal of not actually putting any effort into the examination whatsoever. The fact that alongside of things, if you saw ball lightning 100 meters long, yeah, the air would be so electrically charged, I'm surprised it doesn't fry you. The fact that all the vehicles stopped and restarted. Yeah, I'm going with the ufologists on this one, I'm afraid. I'm not accepting the idea that this one's not a UFO. I'm just throwing it out there. There's been plenty of incidents where there's enough doubt to say that it could go either way or, yeah, it was a hoax. And I'm not against admitting to that very, very greatly. But come on, guys. This is a stretch to say it wasn't something weird. At least something, whatever. So I'm putting it out there that right there, this was a failure. And the fact that they barely spoke to enough of the witnesses was just foolish. So we're going to have to chalk this one up to being a UFO. Now, of course, the question then is, what kind of UFO? And to all of you who have just joined in, remember, please send hearts, like, share, subscribe, do all of the good things so we can keep the channel going. We need lots and lots and lots to make things bounce. And that relies on you. But with that said, the Lubbock Lights, these were an unusual formation of lights seen over the city of Lubbock, Texas in August and September of 1951. The incident received national publicity in the United States as a UFO sighting and was investigated by the US Air Force. According to Captain Edward J. Ruppel, officially all of the sightings, except the UFO that was picked up on radar, are unknowns. Okay. So, Edward J. Ruppelt wrote that the first sighting was reported by 3 professors from the Teknus Technological College, located in Lubbock, on August 25th, 1951, at around 9 p.m. According to Ruppelt, they were sitting in the backyard of one of the professors' homes when they observed a total of 20 to 30 lights, as bright as stars but larger inside, flying overhead. Ruppelt wrote that the professors immediately ruled out meteors as possible cause of sightings, and as they discussed their sighting, a second similar group of lights flew overhead. Good start. Ruppelt said the names of the 3 professors were A.G. Oberg, a chemical engineer, W.L. Ducker, a departmental head and a petroleum engineer, and W.I. Robinson, a geologist, who reported their sightings to the local newspaper, the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. According to UFO author Jerome Clark, 3 women in Lubbock reported that they too had observed peculiar flashing lights in the sky on the same night as the professor's sighting, as well as Karl Heminger, a professor of German at Texas Tech. Clark writes that on September 5th of 1951, all 3 men, along with E. Richard Heinemann, a mathematics professor, and one other professor from Texas Tech, were sitting in the Robinsons' front yard when the lights flew overhead. According to one of the professors named Grayson Mead, the lights appeared to be about the size of a dinner plate and were greenish blue and slightly fluorescent in color. They were smaller than the full moon on the horizon. There are about a dozen to 15 of these lights. They were absolutely circular, and it gave all of us an extremely eerie feeling. Mead said that the lights could not have been birds, but he also stated that they went over so fast that we did wish we could have had a better look. Clark wrote that the professors observed one formation of lights flying above a thin cloud at about 2,000 feet, which he says allowed them to calculate that the lights were traveling at over 970 kilometers per hour. Now, I will point out that in one of our discussions in a previous Live on Aliens, I raised the possibility, or at least the speculation, that UFOs are not the ships, but the aliens themselves, and that aliens are actually a form of light-based creature, which is why we never seem to find physical evidence, because what we're looking for isn't what they are. Maybe. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to say welcome to my dear, dear friend Karina, all the way from Canada. I absolutely hope you are having a fantastic evening and are very much in enjoyment of UFOs. And I'm going to absolutely be doing Canada next, just for you. So, make sure that tomorrow night you get Shane and listen in. Aliens for Karina. Now, unlike a great number of these so-called alien UFO sightings, this one has photographs. So that's pretty cool. Now, on the evening of August 30, 1951, Carl Hart Jr., a freshman at Texas Tech, observed a group of 18 to 20 white lights in a V formation flying overhead. He had on hand his 35mm Kodak camera and walked to the backyard of his parents' home to see if the lights would return. 2 more sets of lights passed overhead, and he captured 5 photographs before they disappeared. After having the photos developed, Hart took them to the offices of the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, where the newspaper's editor, Jay Harris, told Hart that the photos would be purchased for $10 and published in the paper, but that he would run him, Hart, out of town if the photos were fake. The photos were soon reprinted in the newspapers around the nation and in Life magazine. The physics laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio analyzed the Hart photographs, and after extensive analysis and investigation of the photos, Edward J. Ruppelt, the supervisor of the Air Force Project Blue Book, released a written statement to the press that the Hart photos were never proven to be a hoax, but neither were they proven to be genuine. Oh, come on. The Texas Tech professors claimed the photos did not represent what they had observed, as their objects were in a U rather than a V formation. Details. Now, in late September of 1951, Ruppelt learned about the Lubbock lights and investigated them as part of Project Blue Book. He traveled to Lubbock and interviewed the professors, Carl Hart, and others who claimed to have witnessed the lights. His conclusion at the time was that the professors had seen a type of bird called a plover. The city of Lubbock had installed new vapor streetlights in 1951, and Ruppelt believed that migrating plovers were reflecting the new streetlights. I'm sorry, plovers do not glow in the dark, you. Witnesses who supported this assertion included T.E. Snyder, a local farmer who had observed birds flying over a drive-in movie theater, and the birds' undersides were reflected in the light. Not glowing, though. Another pair of witnesses, Joe Bryant and his wife, observed groups of lights flying overhead. When a third group of lights passed overhead, they began to circle the Bryant's home and were identified by sight and sound as plovers. Alan J. Hynek, an astronomer and one Project Blue Book scientific consultant, later contacted one of the professor and learned that the professor claimed the lights were plovers. That is absolute. I'm sorry. Plovers do not glow. And that sounds like an utter cover-up right there. I'm a skeptic. I'm going to throw it out there. I usually find most people's stories to be rubbishy. But come on. Really? Really? That is absolute bull. According to later writing, Ruppelt wrote, they weren't birds, they weren't reflected light, and they weren't spaceships. They were positively identified as very commonplace and explicable natural phenomenon. It's unfortunately I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found, because it's an interesting story of how scientists set up complete instrumentation to track down the lights, and how he spent several months testing the theory after theory until he hit upon the answer. telling the story would lead to his identity. In exchange for his story, I promised the man complete anonymity. But he fully convinced me he had the answer, and having heard hundreds of explanations of USOs, I don't convince easily. Sorry, that's also complete and utter bullshit because, oh no, you're all wrong and I have the correct answer. I just can't tell you anything about it because, after all, that would be bad. Yeah, if you can't give an alternate, then it's not an answer. This entire set of stories here are really dubious. So, right again. While investigating the Lubbock Lights, Ruppelt heard that several people in and around Lubbock claimed to have seen a flying wing moving over the city. Among the witnesses, the wife of Ducker reported that in August 1951 she had observed a huge soundless flying wing pass over her house. Ruppelt knew that the Air Force did possess a flying wing jet bomber, and he felt at least some of the sightings had been caused by the bomber, but he could not explain why, according to the witnesses, that the wing made no sound as it went overhead. Yeah, that whole thing is just one giant cover-up right there. I'm not even going to lie. I generally don't go in for credulity or much like that, but if I've ever seen bullshit put down, that was it. Now, they do say, of course, that the largest city in Texas could be the hottest spot in the Lone Star State for extraterrestrial encounters. Houston outpaces every other city in the state. And according to a recent study conducted by Bramlett Real Estate based in Austin, researchers compiled the number of reported sightings at each Texas metro for its rankings, analyzing more than 6,000 cases reported by the National UFO Reporting Center. I'm sorry. Norfolk. Oh, come on. I cannot be the only person in the world that finds acronyms to be utterly dumb. I believe more in aliens than I do in acronyms. Space City, as Houston has now become known, topped the list with over 600 sightings since 95. So absolutely the top place. Now, we do know that Houston, as great as it is not the only place. We do have other places that also have a huge number, including, of course, El Paso. But amongst other things, we now need to talk about the Marfa Lights. Now, what are the Marfa Lights? We've seen the Lubbock Lights, which is always very good. And my notes are actually going to go out of the window because they are being stupid and they don't want to connect. Let me just fix that because my notes decided to be painful. We'll just get the next one. So, what were the Marfa lights? Well, Marfa is a place, okay, in Texas, um, and they are mysterious, inexplicable lights that are, and here's the kick, often seen in Texas. They're a popular attraction, drawing visitors from all over who hope to witness the phenomena, which has been reported since the late 19th century. Theories about their cause range from natural phenomena like mirages to swamp gas to ghosts and to UFOs. Now, the Marfa lights are typically described as glowing orbs of light that appear in the night sky. They are most often observed after sunset or before sunset, and their appearance is quite unpredictable. Accounts of the lights date back to the late 1800s, with reports from ranchers, Native Americans, and even early meteorologists. So, the theories of the Marfa lights. See if it stands up to the same amount of bullshittery as the other lights. The first version is that they might be natural phenomena. Some scientists suggest that they are mirages caused by temperature inversions that could be related to swamp gas or other natural occurrences. The second theory is ghosts, UFOs, or the spirits of Apache warriors. The third theory is rather more prosaic and common, that they are headlights from vehicles on nearby highways. But despite the different theories, nobody has actually definitively been able to prove any of these things at all. So, they are also called the Marfa ghost lights. Scientists have been actually observing them since 2000. Now, it's true that you do get sort of weird visual mirages that appear in the desert, especially if it's hot and flat. But we do know that the best place from which to view the lights is a widened shoulder on the Highway 90 about 9 miles east of Marfa. They are often reported as distant spots of brightness, distinguishable from ranch lights and automobile lights on Highway 67. Primarily, especially due to their aberrant movement. Robert and Judy Wagers define classic Marfa lights as being seen south-southwest of the Marfa Lights Viewing Center. They define the left margin of the viewing area as being aligned along the Big Bend Telephone Company tower as viewed from the viewing center, and the right margin of the Chinati Peak as viewed from the center. Referring to the Marfa Lights View Park east of Marfa, James Bunnell describes the Marfa lights as orbs of light which change in intensity and color, which can move or remain stationary, splitting or merging. He describes the lights as being usually yellow-orange, but occasionally green, blue, or red. He states that they usually fly above desert vegetation, but below mesas in the background. The first historical record of the Marfa lights was in 1883, which kind of kicks the idea of it being car headlights a little bit aside, because I imagine that in 1883 there wasn't a great number of vehicles on the road. They were observed by a young cowhand, Robert Reed Ellison, who saw flickering lights while he was driving cattle through the Paisano Pass and wondered if it was the campfires of the Apache. Other settlers told him they often saw the lights, and when they investigated, they found no ashes or other evidence of a campsite. Joe and Anne Humphreys next reported seeing the lights in 1885. The first published accounts of the lights were in 1957 in Coronet magazine. In 1976, Tales of the Big Bend include stories dating from way back until the 19th century and a photograph of the Marfa lights by a local rancher. Bunnell lists 34 light sightings from 45 until 2008. Monitoring stations were put in place in 2003. He has identified an average of 9.5 Marfa lights on 5.25 nights per year, but believes that the monitoring stations may only be finding half of the lights in the Mitchell's Flat. So, first answer, atmospheric phenomena. It is true that certain things can cause atmospheric phenomena, and according to certain people, temperature inversions and gradients are what cause the mirages. Especially since Marfa is an elevation of nearly 1,500 meters above sea level, and you get differences in temperature between 22 and 28 degrees centigrade in a single day. Don't know, what do you think? Are you convinced of that theory? I'm not. The car light theory I already think is absolute rubbish, because if they started way back when, I put it to you that to have car lights, you also need to have cars. Just saying. Granted, some occasions it might be car lights when it's just the basics and hopefuls, simply because, yes, Highway 67 is visible from the viewing location. The frequency of light southwest of the view park correlates with the frequency of traffic on US 67. Now, what about before the traffic? The motion of observed light was in a straight line, but it's been observed as not always have been. So, yeah, I'm not sold on the car theory. It's a good theory. Maybe on occasion it was that, but I'm not sold of it being the real lights. Next up, we have spectroscopic analysis, where scientists from the Texas State University use spectroscopy to observe the light from the viewing station. Spectroscopy is the field of study that measures and interprets the electromagnetic spectra in narrower contexts. It is the precise study of color as generated from visible light to all bands of the electromagnetic spectrum. So, fancy words for looking at light. The recorded number of lights that could have been mistaken for lights of unknown origins, but in each case, the movements of the lights and the data from their equipment could be explained as automobile headlights or small fires. And they concluded that the rarity of the genuine Marfa lights means that they didn't actually get enough information to make a reasonable conclusion. In popular media, they've been put out in everything up to and including The Simpsons. So, well, they're popular. Is any of this real? Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like the explanations that have been given. The skeptics just don't have enough to be skeptical on. So again, I find this deeply odd. I'm more inclined to believe the ufologists in this one. Throwing it out there. Don't know, what do you think? Give your opinion. Throw up a decision. Now we're going to another set of lights, because you get these in Texas. And these ones are at Round Rock, which is a very imaginative name for a place. Where do you live? Round Rock. Why do you call it that? There's a round rock. I'm horrible, aren't I? Nevertheless, September 1st, Emily White, who we spoke to, Fox 7, said that, God, dear Lord, excuse me. It was mesmerizing, honestly. It was so silent because if it was one light, I would have maybe thought, oh, it's a helicopter, a plane, or something like that. But there were so many of them together. When asked if she thought it was a close encounter, White said, I'll be honest, kind of. I don't know if I believe her or not. I don't know if I believe in aliens, but I don't know what it was. I've heard a lot of it like that in America, and that things happen. But what was strange is that it made no noise at all, which I thought was really odd. It felt like it was something strange, like an alien invasion or something on the way. Gus McGivern said that I've never believed in UFOs or anything like that, but I suspect that now I might have to rethink. Now, sorry about that. This basically means that people aren't sure, which I think is great for us. It means that there might be something out there. There might not, I don't know, but nevertheless, it's a good one. And again, not enough proof for skeptics to skepticate. Now, in Kyle, Texas, orange glowing orbs moving through the sky were seen by multiple witnesses. Now, remember again, multiple is good. I just walked out and saw this strange light in the sky, said Sal Sanchez, who captured a video of the lights. I was looking around at all the planes in the air, like, is there anybody else seeing this? That was in January. Since then, he's seen it a handful of times, including what he calls a light show like you wouldn't believe on Sunday night. You had to have been there to see it, he said. There was one right after another. His neighbor and family have also witnessed the phenomenon. My daughter saw it another time, said Sanchez. Two that were coming south to north met up with one that was going north to south, and it turned around and followed the others back. Sanchez said he didn't believe it was a drone because of how low it appears to fly without making any sound. He also compared his video to other videos and pictures that have been taken around the country. So many videos out here depict exactly the same thing that I've been seeing, he said. I've seen a lot. Now, my first thought was that maybe it's Chinese lantern, but it's definitely not. The video goes on for a minute and the light is solid the whole time and it looks like it's moving intentionally. Key point right there, peoples. Kyle says she can't rule out a drone, but she can't say for certain that it is. It would have to be a very advanced and expensive one. Drones can fly at like 400 feet, pretty high up there, but some can do it and go even up to 100 miles an hour. She did note that drones are not allowed to fly in civilian airspace until 2006, and the sightings similar to this have been reported well before then. Hays County spokesperson said they had not been notified of anything, and the city of Kyle never responded to Fox 7. If there's something that's not of this world, why here in Kyle? Good question. In June of 2021, the Pentagon released a report on UAPs. Out of 144 cases, it was only able to identify one of the reported sightings as a large deflating balloon. It's very possible that this is not anything that we are familiar with, and that this is truly mysterious, which seems fair. Now, it also adds to my theory that aliens are made of light. I'm just saying. Now we're going to go on to something else which may or may not debunk aliens, but I mean, you've got to look at both sides. Let's be fair. So, as we are going along, remember, like, share, subscribe, join in and be part of our wondrous channel. Join the subscriptions because you guys are amazing. And it will make the channel work. And we are growing. We are growing, which is good. Now, this is proof that some of the alien or UFO stories are not true. So, a Texas man conspired to kidnap and transport illegal aliens. And there have been times when people think alien abductions are the result of actual criminals, which is very possible. And this was one case where, in fact, it was absolutely the case that it was a kidnapping for reasons, and they were caught. Which basically shows that you can absolutely get hoaxes. People do believe them. They get out of hand. But then we have to ask another question. And this is equally important because in many ways it kind of ruins the veracity of many alien abductions, which I think are kind of weird. But work with me. What is it with aliens and anal probes? I mean, if they're that advanced and intelligent, why? Now, a psychiatrist had a look into this and said that the idea that we could be reached by some kind of alien intelligence, it would absolutely be very, very shocking. And they said they came into the idea of this very reluctantly, and that it actually is a true mystery. In other words, I did everything I could to rule out other sources, up to and including sexual abuse. Some of the people are abused, but they are able to distinguish clearly the abduction trauma from other forms of abuse. Some forms of psychosis or people making up stories, I could reject that on the basis that there was no gain for the vast majority of these people, which again is great. It shows that here is somebody who's got, so the skeptic, looking objectively. Okay, and yes, most of these people get nothing out of that, and they do have trauma. I've now worked with over 100 experiences intensively, which involves an initial 2 hour or so screening interview before I do anything else. But in case after case, I've been impressed with the consistency of the story, the sincerity with which people tell their stories, the power of the emotions connected with this, the self doubt, all the appropriate responses that somebody would have from a genuine trauma. So Nova then asked, please tell us how literally you intend people to take this. Are you suggesting that people are really being snatched up by aliens and experimented on board a spaceship? To which they replied, how literally to take this is one of the most interesting and complex aspects of this, and I want to walk through that as clearly as I can. There are aspects of this which I believe we are justified in taking quite literally. That is, UFOs are in fact observed, filmed on camera at the same time that people are being abducted. People, in fact, have been observed to be missing at the time that they are reporting their abduction experiences. They return from their experiences with cuts, ulcers on their body, triangular lesions, which follow the distribution of the experiences that they recover, of what was done to them in the craft, and the surgical like activity of these beings. All of that has a literal physical aspect and is experienced and reported with appropriate feeling by the abductees, with or without hypnosis or relaxation exercise. Fair still? All of that has been a literal physical aspect and is experienced properly. There is I believe, graduation of experiences that go from the most literal physical kinds of hurts, wounds, person removed, spacecraft that can be photographed, to experiences that are more psychological, spiritual, and involve an extension of consciousness. The difficulty for our society and for our mentality is we kind of have an either or mentality. It's either literally physical or it's in the spiritual realm, the unseen realm. What we seem to have no place for or have lost this place for are phenomena that can begin in one and cross over and manifest and show up in the other. The simple answer would be yes, it's both. It's both literally physically happening to a degree, and also there is some kind of psychological, spiritual experience occurring and originating, perhaps in another dimension. And so the phenomenon stretches us. Now, why? What they were asked, what is the point of the experience? So it was replied that several effects of these experiences term up from those that endure them. The first and most familiar aspect or fit is a traumatic event in which a blue light of some kind of energy paralyzes a person. Wherever they are, they can't move. They are removed from wherever they were. They are floated through a wall or out the car, carried up on this beam of light into a craft, and they're subjected to a number of now familiar procedures, which involves the being staring at them, the probing of their body and their orifices, a complex process whereby they sense, in the case of men, that sperm is removed, and in women, eggs removed, some sort of hybrid offspring created, which they're brought back to see in later abductions. That's the literal. Now, the effect of that is this, or what seems to be going on here, in a number of abductees, but not just people I see, but the ones that others have as well. It produces a new kind of species to bring us together to produce a hybrid species, which the abductees are sometimes told will populate the Earth, or will be there to carry evolution forward after the human race has completed what it is now doing, which is the destruction of the Earth as a living system. It's a kind of later form. It's an awkward coming together of a less embodied species than we are and us for an evolutionary purpose. Now, this might not be literally true. It might be that this is a communication, that perhaps we need to change our ways. And it may not be that these are literally our babies, but an expression that we need to evolve. What we can say is absolutely the trauma is real. How, we're not sure. Why seems to be either a change in us or a replacement of us. We might become the aliens. I don't know how I feel about that. Don't know. What do you think? Do you guys think that this sounds like reason, or I don't know? Now, a remarkable post on Instagram and Facebook in April of 2025 was an eye catcher where Texas man admits to kidnapping people to only probe them while disguised as an alien. This accompanied by a picture of an older man. The post explained that this individual was a retired trucker who confessed to 79 kidnappings in the American West over a period of 40 years. He also confessed to using psychoactive drugs to subdue his victim and to assaulting them in various bodily cavities, manually and with a variety of odd devices which he designed and manufactured himself. Alleged victims include UFO investigators who were found in the vicinity of Area 51 in Nevada and Roswell in New Mexico. Details of his arrest and the legal charges against him were provided. It is pointed out that this meme got around, and I saw it, but this never happened. It was a joke article published by the World News Daily Report, a fairly well-known producer of fictional satirical content. It was complete fabrication and created for laughs. The other problem is that pretty much everybody took it seriously. Some of these people worked for various fact-checking and debunking sites, and they gave the story a significant level of investigative attention, where it was shown that the photograph which accompanied the article was a mugshot from a 2011 blog post and had nothing to do with the article. Some zealous fact-checkers followed up to the point that they could assert that neither El Paso Sheriff Office, El Paso Police, or the FBI had actually fulfilled the law enforcement roles alleged in the anal probe case. Now, why would anybody take the time to debunk this much? Well, if we're trying to find out whether this kind of thing really happens, you've got to. My big question is why the idiot went out and did the fake story in the first place, because quite frankly, it was dumb. Really, honestly, I don't know. And that's my opinion on that. Now, an interesting case, which obviously happened in Texas, was where Mayor W.C. Jackson in 1973 invited extraterrestrials to visit Texas. He said no one has ever made those fellas welcome. His hospitality came almost a century too late. Long before anyone had heard of Roswell, flying saucers were spotted in Texas in 1878, according to a local legend, and the first touchdown there in 1897. Texas can boast of having some of the most compelling evidence of alien visitors, such as Aurora, Lubbock, uh, and Dayton's close encounters, which we will look into now. Texas has quite a few ufologists, including Heaven's Gate leader Marshall Applewhite, who was born in Spur, had his first spiritual vision while walking on Galveston Beach, as well as others who reportedly believe that the Marfa lights are proof of a subterranean energy grid that the Pentagon is trying to tap into with alien technology. In 1878, in Denison, though, thanks to a long-forgotten 19th century farmer named John Martin, unidentified flying objects were first described as saucers in Texas. According to the article A Strange Phenomenon that appeared in the Denison Daily on January 25, 1878, Martin was hunting when he saw a dark object high in the northern sky. News account states that the peculiar shape and its velocity with which the object seemed to approach riveted his attention, and he strained his eyes to discover its character. When first noticed, it appeared to be about the size of an orange, but it then grew larger. After gazing at it for some time, the article continues, Mr. Martin became blind from long looking and left of viewing to rest his eyes. On resuming his view, the objects were almost overhead and increased considerably in size and appeared to be going through space at a wonderful speed. When directly over him, it was the size of a large saucer and evidently was at great height. Although Martin clearly saw a saucer, Idaho pilot Kenneth Arnold is widely and incorrectly credited as the first person to describe a UFO object as a saucer. Arnold ushered in the post-war wave of UFO hysteria in 1947 when he told a local reporter, and in turn the Associated Press, that he had seen an object in the sky over Washington Cascade Mountains that flew like a saucer would if you skipped it across the water. Arnold coined the term flying saucer, but really the honor rightly belongs to the Texan John Martin, who had seen it 69 years earlier. Lots and lots of aliens. In 1948, in Laredo, on July 7th, several officers from an Air Force base were asked to cordon off a remote strip of land where an extraterrestrial aircraft had landed. Rumored to be a large disk, it supposedly flew over Albuquerque at around 2,000 miles per hour before crashing into the West Texas desert, where it was then recovered by government agents. One variation on the story claimed that the badly burnt inhabitant of the craft was significantly shorter in height than the average human and had unusually long arms. In 1978, a man claiming to be a former Air Force photographer sent reporters photos of a severely burnt body inside some wreckage, pictures he claimed he was instructed to take of wrecked experimental aircraft outside Laredo in that summer. The singed alien in the photo, quickly dubbed Tomato Man, because of his extremely large head, is a human pilot who was killed when the plane crashed and burned. The lack of hair and enlarged head is the result of long fire. Is that true? We don't know. But we do know that they have absolutely the worst acronyms ever. Now, Dayton came into the light again in Texas in 1980s, December 29th, on a remote road 40 miles outside of Houston. Restaurant owner Betty Cash and her friend Licky Landrum and Landrum's 7-year-old grandson Colby were returning home after a night out when a large glowing diamond-shaped aircraft spurting flames descended from the sky and hovered above in the roadway in front of them. When they got out of the car to take a closer look at the object, it made a loud roaring noise, and they were forced to return to the car because of the intense heat. Cash claimed that she grasped her car's hot door handle and her wedding ring burned into her hand. Soon thereafter, the mysterious aircraft flew away along with a swarm of black Chinooks, or military helicopters. Cash, who remained outside the car longer than the Landrums, was admitted to hospital as a burn victim. All three passengers manifested different symptoms of what appeared to be radiation sickness, such as burns, blisters, nausea, rashes, headaches, sore eyes, hair and fingernail loss. Cash was later diagnosed with breast cancer, and Landrum developed severe cataracts. I never believed in UFOs, Mrs. Cash later told reporters. I was the first one to laugh. But, she added, I was terrified, and now I'm afraid to look up. Two theories. Experimental military device. But what kind of pilot would be so dumb as to hover over a usable road in a built-up area? That's just stupid. If it was a recovered alien aircraft that the Air Force was trying to fly, that could be a problem. Cash and Landrum hired a lawyer which filed a suit against the government for $20 million in damages. The case dragged on in district court for several years, called up the testimony of officials from NASA, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, and was dismissed in 1986 because no government agency owned or operated any aircraft fitting Cash and Landrum's description. Well then, it was a UFO. What you gonna do when they come for you? So there you have it. Aliens in Texas. And I have to say, of all the places that we've done stories about, these ones have been the best. All the other ones you could possibly explain away in certain ways. It could be this, it could be that. But these ones are pretty hardcore. The skeptics' attempts to dissuade that they were whatever have been pretty thin, which kind of implies this is the real thing. This is what we're looking for. Hell yeah, UFOs. What we don't have is proof of aliens, which sticks me back to my original theory that these are not alien craft. These are the aliens, and they're here. But for that to be said, I don't know. I think we need to find out more about what kind of aliens you get and what shapes they might take, and whether or not we really can give any kind of understanding to any of this, because I suspect we're looking at it wrong. That said, maybe these are not aliens. Maybe these are demons, ghosts, something more in that regard. All of this is possible. I don't know. But I would very much like to hear from you. And I would very much like to have your opinions on all of these because that makes it interesting. And I will add again, like, share, subscribe, do all of the good things and send lots of hearts so we can reach our goals and do more for you. And if you would ever like to come on and join live, as long as you're polite, I would love to have you on board. But until then, next time I think I am going to hit Canada. Canada sounds like it would be a good place to go next. And with that, we have come to the end of the fascinating journey that we have been taking. So I shall thank you all for being here. It's been truly wondrous, and I've enjoyed it immensely. And come back tomorrow night, 10 o'clock South Africa time. That's GMT +2. And I do hope to see you then. But until then, my friends, sleep deep, sleep sweet, but sleep with one eye open, because I put it to you, of all the things out there that might go bump in the night, they might go bump for you.